So, hello everyone. Warm welcome once again to Sherpa Romeo webinar from our Croatian Association for Scholarly Communication. I wish a warm welcome to our initiator of this event or webinar. That is our board member Jadranka Stojanovski, university professor from University of Zadar and Institute Ruđer Bošković. And I want to thank you for inviting our dear friends from JISC, Jane Anders, Melanie, Heeley, and Karen Jackson on the screen at the moment, who will share information about the Sherpa and Romeo services, what are the news, what we can expect in future, and how can editors share their general policies in Sherpa Romeo, and what is expected from someone who is running the journal. So I will ask Jadranka to start with a short introduction and to introduce our speakers. Thank you.
Thank you, Eva. I prepared a short presentation with few slides, more than Jane, with only one. So to give, yes, a short introduction in our today's webinar, I would like to thank you once more, our colleagues from JISC, Jane, Melanie, and Karen, and why we are organizing this seminar. So the publishing landscape is changing continuously, and it's really not easy to follow all the changes, even for us who are on everyday based in scholarly communication topics. And the characteristic of scholarly publishing system, which has been created last 50 years, I would say, with a huge level of commercialization, not very adequate adoption of digital media reproducibility crisis, peer review crisis, and all other crises. All this is call for changes for improving scholarly communication. So our first response from the community was open access movement, but it was clear that being open is not enough anymore. So more broad and open science movement, which started approximately 7-8 years ago, intend to open all types of research outcomes, imposing more requirements for researchers, authors on one side, and for editors on other side. So it's really, and also open science brought on the table many things or challenges which needs to be solved. So first, there is a need from the community to get ownership on your own intellectual work. So rights and licensing are really huge issue in the open science world, and this will be actually the topic of our webinar today. But also I would like to mention here in the beginning that requirements on editors are bigger every day, and there are really not only requirements on editorial quality, but on the transparency of editorial work and all editorial policies, which are really important for every journal. It is also needed to increase visibility, improve communication and impact, and we need to think also on the topics included in responsible research. I would like to mention here research integrity issues, diversity, equity, and inclusion, which is very popular by European Commission and other policymakers, and other ethical issues in scholarly publishing. So we all heard, and we are very familiar with Plan S, who was launched in late 2018, and with a big demand that from January 2029, all scholarly publications own results from research funded by public or private grants by national, regional, international research council and funders must be published in open access. And there are 10 principles of Plan S and many additional requirements for editors. I just extracted 3 of them, which are relevant for our webinar today. So Plan S is calling for retaining copyright to the publications on the side of authors, and that all publications must be published under open license, preferably Creative Commons attribution license. The funders also encourage governments, universities, research organizations, and other bodies to introduce open science principles in their policies and their everyday work. And also the 10th, maybe the most important principles Plan S announced is that there is a strong need for changes in the research assessment system, and the funders will, according to that, the funders will do necessary changes to measure not only quantitative metric indicators, which are popular in scholarly community, but intrinsic merit of the work. We still need to see how this will. How is the situation in Croatia? At the moment, we have 529 journals sharing, open access journals sharing the same platform. And it's really one of the most popular tool for and platform for researchers and journal editors in Croatia. And actually the presence of journal in Hrvatskih platform requires from journal editor a lot of work to present the necessary technical data, the policies, guidelines for authors, reviewers, ethical codes, etc. And if we look at one journal, for example, Acta Stomatologica Croatica, this is English interface, but maybe not all the content is in English, so please accept my apologies, Jade, Melanie, and Karen. But if we look at the right segment of the description of the journal, we can see that, for example, Acta Stomatologica Croatica, it's freely, the content is freely available under a kind of restrictive Creative Commons license, not commercial, no derivatives, but it's still Creative Commons, which is very positive. And actually, we can see that even most of Croatian journals are declaring what can be done with the published content. There is still a strong need to somehow explain what versions, what what can be done in the phase of pre-publishing, publishing, and post-publishing with the different versions of the paper. So, speaking about selection of journal for publication, we can see that from the author side, they are additionally considering in which journal they will publish their work in order to comply with their funders' rules. Institutions are also considering the conditions of journal in which their employees have published, and the possibility of storing the published articles in institutional repositories. This is really, from our experience, the task for Sherlock Holmes to discover what you are allowed to do, what you are not. And on other side, publishers and journals are striving to ensure compliance with open science principles and guidelines, recommendation, and conclusions of the European Commission. And we are all aware that the European Commission is a very strong supporter of open science, but it's also very demanding, and they are publishing regularly new recommendations, and sometimes it takes a lot of effort to follow everything. So we need really a tool which will enable for institutions, libraries, authors, and funders insight in publishers' copyright and self-archiving policies. Following increasing open access, open science demands at different levels. So we can see that some demands are institutional level, some demands are coming from researchers, some demands from funders, etc. So there is continuous intent to have a community-owned research outcomes, so that there is a strong call that copyright should be left to authors and researchers. We are all aware of increasing APC. So I think that the biggest APC I recorded is about 10,000 euros for one article. And authors will more, and institutions and funders will more and more looking for journals willing to publish without article processing charges. And we know that among 500 Croatian open access journals, only about between 20 and 30 of them are charging authors. All other journals are diamond. Embargo is almost not accepted at all levels, so it's still in use, but it's not popular at all. We should also recognize increasing importance of preprints, which was proved during Corona and COVID-19, fighting COVID-19 virus and inventing a vaccine, and how it was important to share all research results and all publications and data related to this research. So preprints are now present in the disciplines which were not present before. We are now dealing not only with publications, and we certainly need to redefine the term, what publications mean, because we are publishing also data, software, methods, protocols, and in different media, not only text, but also audio, video, and multimedia content. And a reform of the research assessment system will also bring more attention to diamond journals and to the quality of their editorial processes. And confusion in the current publishing system. It's really huge, especially concerning ownership rights and licensing. So some publishers prohibit authors from using their own articles. Others allow it, but under certain conditions. Journals often declare different forms of use, or you can find different information on journal website, different in copyright agreements you signed, and different information in the mail, which are emails which are sent to authors. And also we are dealing with different versions of article, and also we need to deal with outdated terminology in your environment. Like I really think that preprint deserved a better term. So because in most of the cases we are not printing anything. But different versions of articles are really important. And such a service exists, which which aggregates and analyzes publishers' open access policy and provide information on publisher copyright and open access archiving policies. And you will hear more from our colleagues from JISC. They will tell you more about JISC as an institution, about Sherpa, because Romeo is not the only service they are offering, but the focus, of course, will be on Romeo and the information Romeo is providing. Karen, the floor is open for you, please.
Thank you. Okay, I will share my screen and I can tell you a little bit more about Sherpa Romeo. Okay. Well, thank you very much for inviting us today. Let me see if I can just display this full screen. There we go. Okay. Yes, thank you very much for inviting us to join you in this webinar session today. So first of all, to introduce myself, my name's Karen Jackson. I am a product manager in the Open Research Services team at JISC, and I have particular responsibility for the Sherpa services, which includes Sherpa Romeo. I'm also joined on the call today by my colleagues, Melanie, Heeley and Jane Anders. And Melanie and Jane are the team that manage all of our data and the data sets across all of the Sherpa services, and also the submission process. So if there's any questions after my presentation today, particularly around the process of submitting a policy to Sherpa, and the requirements around that, then Jane and Melanie will be able to help with those questions as well. So just for context, I thought I would start off with an overview of all of the Sherpa services that we have. And then I will move on to show you a demonstration of the Sherpa Romeo website and the submission form. It's a brand new submission form. It's gone live on the website only this week. So if you have submitted any policies to Sherpa before, then well, I'm sure you'll notice that it's a different form than you might have looked at previously. So I'll walk through that form as well and just give you an idea of the requirements for completing that. So an overview of Sherpa services. So as I mentioned, we are based as a team, we're based within the Open Research Services team at JISC. So that's a collection of different tools and services and systems that are all designed to support the open access publication lifecycle, really. So from providing access to policy and compliance information, to managing the costs of open access, to the sort of the technical logistics of moving metadata between systems and making sure you've got metadata in the right place to be able to use and find open access resources. So there's a whole suite of products that we offer. Our team is particularly concerned with the Sherpa services, of which there are 4 parts. So these are the 4 parts that I've summarized on the slide here. At present, these are all accessed via 4 separate web pages. So they are presented as 4 distinct services. We're currently in the process, just to give you a little bit of information about where we're going, we're currently in the process of designing a new Sherpa website, a new interface. So in future, and this will be early in the new year, we'll be launching a new site where you can access all of this policy information from one website. But at present, they are still presented as 4 different services. So firstly, Sherpa Romeo. This is a data set of publisher open access policies. It's an international data set. We've got policies from all across the world. And these are publishers' policies about what an author, a researcher, can do with their publication, generally journal article, if they publish with them. So it includes information such as whether they can make the final published PDF version open access, whether the author retains their copyright or the publisher owns the copyright, whether there is an embargo period before an article could be made open access, license requirements. So if there's any requirement from within the publisher policy that a particular type of license must be applied, where an open access article can be shared, whether it could be in an institutional repository, for example, or perhaps the author's personal website. So all sorts of information like that, which should be included in a publisher's policy. It's presented in a summarized format on the Sherpa Romeo database. So yeah, a large database of publisher policies. Our main users for that data tend to be university librarians, research support staff in universities, and I think increasingly researchers themselves as well. So anybody who needs to find out about the policies of the publishers that they might be publishing with. So that will be our main focus for the session today. But the other services that we have which complement each other are Sherpa Juliet, which is a similar model to Sherpa Romeo, except this is the open access policies of research funders. So again, a collection of funders, details in terms of what they require from the researchers or authors whose research they fund. So it might be along the lines of, if we fund your research, any outputs, any articles that are published as a result of that research must be made open access immediately on publication, or perhaps within 3 months of publication. They must have a certain type of license applied to them. The author must retain copyright, for example. So anything like that which a funder requires of the outputs of the research that they fund would be included in Sherpa Juliet. Sherpa Fact is a compliance checker. So this is somewhere where a user can select a funder that they've been funded by and select a journal that they're interested in publishing in, and check if the policies of those 2 places comply with each other. So if I'm funded by X funder and I publish with Y publisher, is that okay? Will I be able to satisfy all the requirements of my funder if I publish in this place? So that's the sort of question that service answers. And then finally, we have Open Door, which is the directory of open access repositories. And here we've got, again, international collection of the details of open access repositories. So this includes information such as the location, the URL for the repository, the type of material that's held, and also the software that's used in that repository as well. So that is the span of all of the Sherpa services. But as I said, we're focusing on Sherpa Romeo today. So I will just come off this slide and jump into Sherpa Romeo. So this screen may be familiar to some of you if you've used Sherpa in the past. This is the sort of the front page, the search page that you will arrive at if you come to search for something in Sherpa Romeo. I will start by just showing you an example policy so you can see how it's displayed in our database. It's possible to search by journal title or ISSN, or just by the publisher if you know the details of the one that you're interested in, or we can browse by country as well, which I will do. So we can go to a Croatian title. So currently we've got 105 titles listed in the database, which are based in Croatia. And let's go down here. Let's go into this one. Okay, so this is a really typical journal record in Sherpa Romeo. At the top, you've got all of the general publication information, title, ISSN details, publisher details, and the URL for the journal. And then further down here, we've got the policy information. We split all of the policy information into the different versions that the policy might apply to. So published version would be the final published PDF of a journal article. The accepted version is the pre-PDF version. So this is generally after peer review, but prior to the sort of the publisher's final formatting and and logos and everything like that being applied. And the submitted version would be the pre-peer review version of the article. So we find that most publisher policies sort of split into these sections in terms of what you can do with each different type of version of the article. So if I expand this first one, you can see this particular one for the published version, OA publishing is allowed. There's no embargo. Standard CC BY license is applied, and the copyright owner is the publisher. And these are the locations where that published PDF version can be shared. So quite a straightforward policy. Again, slightly different for the accepted version. Author retains copyright of that version, and they can be shared in a few other places. And again, I've got the details there. So this is quite a straightforward policy. Obviously, that's great. We encourage publishers to have a nice, straightforward, simple policy. However, we do have plenty of policies that have more than just these three options. So we've got policies that might have 2 or 3 different options within each version. So it might be a case that if you are funded by a particular funder, the publisher will allow you to do different things than otherwise, or there could be other requirements with the policy. So if it's required by law, if it's required by your institution, then they will allow you to share it in different ways. There's all sorts of different variations on the publisher policies, but we can accommodate complex policies with with a number of different options within them. This just happens to be quite a nice straightforward one. Okay, so that is an example record. Yes, was there a question?
And may I just comment shortly? So Sažetak is accepting only published version. So Sažetak is not publishing submitted version. So I just want to state that declaring that Sažetak is repository for submitted version or accepted version, it's somehow not
okay,
correct.
But
So
if I can add something, perhaps they're using OGS from Sažetak. That's the reason why they wrote it, because I've also noticed that. But we have a software which is integrated into Sažetak, so I think if they are using it, perhaps that's the reason why they wrote it like that.
Yeah, possibly. So it's the details, obviously any updates to details, we rely on notification from the publishers. So it may be that we haven't received a notification or an update on this policy. I'm not sure, but yeah, I mean, we can certainly, as long as we're informed about any mistakes or updates that need to be made, then we can make them to records. But yeah, I'm afraid I don't know exactly why or where that particular bit of information would have come from, but it would have been at the point of submission. That would have been the information that we received, but that can certainly be updated.
That was just noticed to our editors attending the webinar that yes, that they need to carefully mark what is really what are really the practices. So Sažetak is in charge for published version and submitted version. It will be good to state institutional repositories or different places.
Okay. Lovely. Yep. Thank you. Okay. So I'll jump on now to just show you a little bit about our inclusion criteria. So on the About page of Sherpa Romeo, we've got lots of information about different aspects of the service, but we also have down here a little bit about our inclusion criteria. It's fairly straightforward. Each journal must have a valid ISSN to be listed in Sherpa, and we do require that ISSN is registered on the ISSN portal, which is at issn.org. That's hyperlinked there. Each journal website must clearly state the editorial board of the journal, and all details of the policy, so licenses, the open access status and what is allowed in terms of open access, and copyright statements must all be clearly and readily available online. So we do insist that any details that are recorded in the Sherpa record are also clearly stated in the policy as shared on the journal's website as well. It's not possible for us to include any extra information that isn't actually included in the policy as is shown on the website. And your policy should include at least one way that an article could be made open access. So we don't particularly want to be listing policies that actually state that you're not allowed to make your article open access. And in terms of the publishers, contact details must be clearly and readily available online for the publisher. And there must be a publication ethics policy, which is clearly stated on the website as well. So that's our basic criteria in order to be included in Sherpa Romeo. We do, as I mentioned, we've launched a new submission form just this week. It has been tried out on a number of users beforehand as well. So we've made some tweaks and updates. But we do now ask for quite detailed information from the publishers, really to make sure that our records are as accurate and as full as possible, and to make it manageable so that our team aren't having to sort of go backwards and forwards too much between publishers and ourselves in order to make sure we've got the full details. So with our new form, our intention is that we can gather all of the information that's required upfront to be able to create a full and accurate record. So to do that, all of the submission information is on our contact page. And we've split this into sections. So hopefully it's clear for you to find the section that's most appropriate to you. If I assume that people that are thinking about starting off a listing are those who are not currently listed in Sherpa Romeo, then we've got information here. There's quite a lot of information, but I do encourage you to read all of this before making your first submission, just to make sure you are fully prepared and you have all the information to hand that you will require. And then once you've read through that, we've got a link down here to complete our new record form. So I've already opened that in a new page over here. So this is our submission form. It's quite detailed, like I said, but once you've done this for the first time, you know, it'll become a lot easier to do if you need to then do it again. And it's a dynamic form in the sense that depending on the answers you give, some questions will appear or disappear, so that you should only be answering the questions that are relevant to your particular situation. So I've started to add in just a few of my details so that I could show how the form works. We ask that submissions are only made by a person who has a position of authority for the journal. So if you were to say no to this particular question, all of the other questions would disappear because we wouldn't accept the submission. So if the answer is yes, we just ask for some basic description of what your role is. So this could be editor, publisher, somebody who works on the journal, just as long as you're in a position where you are able to give us the policy information accurately. Further down, all of the standard journal details that you would expect. Journal title. It's fine for this to be given in the language that the journal is published in. We do ask that at least one or other of ISSN or EISSN is provided. You don't have to provide both if you don't have both, but we do require at least one of those. A link to the journal homepage and also the editorial board. And then down here, we ask whether you have more than one journal that you want to submit, which shares the same policy. So if you've got 10 journals that all have exactly the same open access policy, you don't have to submit this form 10 times. You can do it once. And we have a link to a spreadsheet template there. I'll just quickly open that so you can see what it looks like. Sorry, it just takes a minute to open. Okay, drag it onto the right screen. So this is just a really basic template. We just ask for the title, ISSN details, homepage URL, and editorial board URL for each of the titles that you want to add. So as long as they have exactly the same policy, you can list as many as you want to on that page, and then you don't need to complete the form multiple times. So that's there. And then if we carry on with the form, we ask for publisher details, publisher name, URL, country, the governing body and the publication ethics of the publisher. If the publisher is already listed in Sherpa Romeo, we can select yes, and that will remove all of those other details because we will already have them listed in the database. But assuming it's a brand new publisher for us, we will ask you to provide those details. And then we move on to the open access policy itself. So again, if you already have your policy, exactly the same policy listed in Sherpa Romeo, you could tell us that, yes, my policy is listed. And then we will just ask you to provide a URL for the record of that policy in Sherpa Romeo. And you don't need to provide all the details again. Assuming that it's a new policy we don't have listed, you would select no, and then we will ask you to provide all the policy details. So if you already have listings in Sherpa, the form could potentially be quite short, but assuming it's a brand new one, then we will collect all of the details at this point. So we ask here for some general information, journal type, the policy URLs, and any additional information that you want to let us know about that there isn't space for in the questions. Down here, we've got general details about that apply to the whole policy. So firstly, whether there's any prerequisites for the policy. So this will be, for some policies, we have a situation where this particular policy is only applicable if required by the funder or if required by law, for example. So if you have any requirements like that or prerequisites, they can be stated there, and details of particular funders or subjects can be provided there. Further down, we move on to the details of each of the specific versions. So there's space for you to provide details of what can and can't be done with the published version. So assuming open access is allowed, select yes. Then we have questions about where the article can be found or deposited as a published PDF version. So a list of all of the common locations that we have are provided there. Is there an embargo period applied to this particular version? And again, a list of all of the common answers that we would have to that, or there is a place to select other if required. Copyright owner, license details, and then any other conditions that are applied to this particular policy. So we have quite a lot of policies, for example, that state that wherever the published PDF is shared, there must be a link back to the publisher's webpage. It must be shared, for example, with an acknowledgement of the publisher and a set statement that goes with it. Sometimes it must always include a reference to the DOI. So all sorts of different conditions that could be applied to your policy. And then finally, details of whether the publisher will automatically deposit the article in any particular repositories. They can be listed there. I won't go through all of these questions because the questions are very, very similar for each type, but depending on which versions you allow to be shared within your policy, you will have a similar set of questions for each of those versions. And that's it really. That's all of the information that we gather as part of the form. The last step in the process is to upload that spreadsheet. If you have added in some other journal details onto the list, then that can be uploaded there. It will all be submitted together and received by our team, by Jane and Melanie, who will then process it, and they'll be able to add on those other journal titles to the records. And finally, just our privacy notice and confirmation that you are a human being before it's submitted. I won't actually press submit because this form won't go through because I haven't completed all of the mandatory aspects to it. But hopefully that gives you an idea of all of the information that is required to complete the submission form. Once you've submitted, it will be received by our team, checked and processed before being made live in the Sherpa database. We will contact you if there's any problems or any clarification that needs to be done on any of the details. And as hopefully you will deposit your policy in Sherpa, you will be amongst the first people that are using our new form. So, you know, we very much welcome any feedback or comments that you have on the form and the submission process and how you find that as well. For any general inquiries about submissions, the submission process and Sherpa Romeo in general, we have our email address is help@jisc.ac.uk. We can pop that in the chat as well. And if you mention Sherpa in the subject line of your email, then that will be directed to our team and we'll be able to help you out with any questions that you have about the process. And I think that brings me to the end of everything that I need to want to share just now. So I will stop sharing, and I can see that there's been a few comments in the chat. So if anyone has
thank you,
any questions.
you, Karen. I just want to ask something. What about the journals which are already included in Sherpa Romeo, and they need to update their information? Perhaps they wrote something wrong, or they realize that something has to be changed, or they change their policy. Do they use the same form for that?
No, good question. Thank you for reminding me on that. So actually, let me just go back and share my screen again, because I can show you there is a separate part where you can notify us of an update that needs to be made to a record. Okay, so if I just jump back, let's go back to that journal that I was on before. There is a suggest an update button. So on every record page down here near the bottom of the page, there is a suggest an update for this record button, which just takes you through to a short form where you can notify us of some details that need to be updated for that particular record. If it's a completely new policy that applies to that publication, it would be best to complete a new record form, I think, just so we can gather all of the details. But if it's just a small amendment or correcting something on a record page, then this would be the best way to do it. And then that goes through and we get the details of which title and which record you were looking at the time when you click the button. So an update can be made. And
I had some other question which can sound strange, but what if someone submitted the policy and then you have the next one from the same journal submitting once again because he or she wasn't aware that someone already submitted the info about the journal? Because we had similar things going on with some other services and platforms that if you have, for example, editor-in-chief and some managing editor, and they both want to do something, and editors-in-chief tend to do something their own way, and perhaps in some situations there could be a lack of communication between them. So what then? Do you contact the journal back, or if it's about the same data, if the same data was submitted, then it's not a problem. But if they, I don't know, submitted different things, then could be
yeah, if they submit different information.
I think the process would be that basically, obviously, we probably come to the first one and do the record for that, say if it was a new edition. The second one might end up as thinking, oh, that's a duplicate of the first one, so we'd probably write to them and just say, this information, you know, this publication is now already in Romeo. So I guess at that point, if the information was different, that you'd have to submit an update, because we wouldn't read through all the information again, probably.
Yeah, but they will receive the feedback that someone already submitted the info. That's one of the things why I'm asking that, because we had some changes of editors recently. Editor-in-chief of several journals were changed, so they changed the editors, and the new one is not that aware of the things that the previous one was, because it's all on voluntary basis, as you know, as most academic journals are. So perhaps someone is retired and is no longer active, and he or she didn't pass the information to his successor. And then we tend to have situations like that. That is why I'm asking. So are you doing the update of the records by hand, or is something which is done automatically? You're just checking the filled in fields, or the reason why I'm asking that, because I see a lot of questions from the participants who already submitted their information and are still waiting for it. So is it a long process? You have to do it, you know, skim through all of that and do it by hand. So it's taking some time, I suppose.
Yeah, basically it's a very heavily manual database. Yeah, it's very manual, unfortunately. We'd like to look at maybe seeing if there's ways that it can be automated, but at the moment it's a lot of manual data entry on the part of myself and Jane.
Yeah, do you have an approximate period of time after submitting the policy to the completion and publishing in Sherpa Romeo? You have like an estimation for new editors to know how much time they have to wait for it to appear in Sherpa Romeo?
Yeah, it does depend on how busy we are through the year. 6 to 8 weeks is fairly standard during the year. We are trying to get that down. I think we're currently at about five weeks at the moment of a wait from submission of a policy we can use to be added.
So I suppose around Christmas it's even longer. So that's of course reasonable. Do we have some questions from the audience? Please, you can ask in the chat, or perhaps raise a hand, or so I can unmute you if you have some specific problems which you had to deal with. Jane, I will ask you, what are your biggest challenges? Is it what are the most common mistakes, or how should I call it, or inconsistencies from journal editors that you've experienced so far?
I think possibly not matching what the information is on the journal or publisher website. So we also will go for that as our source material as well. So for example, we might get the submission saying Creative Commons attribution license, but actually it's Creative Commons attribution non-commercial. So yeah, the knowledge that Creative Commons is not, Creative Commons is a family license, but Creative Commons attribution is a license, and not the family.
So the journal editors should check their information and update the information on the website also. Is it mandatory to have the information about the policy, licensing policy in the PDF version of the article? Or is it recommended? I'm recommended it, of course, but is it mandatory to have something in the PDF
We don't require it to be on the PDF of the article, but we would expect something on the PDF or HTML on the website of the journal or publisher, depending on how the setup is.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, do we have some questions from the audience? Jadranka, do you want to add something?
Actually, Jane already addressed the question I wanted to. So my question was, what are you doing if during evaluation process you find no information on publishers or journal website, or you find contradictory information? So what are you doing in such cases?
I think it depends on what information is contradictory. We may just go with what's on the website. Other times we'll feed it back that could the editor please resubmit because it doesn't make sense. For example, on the old forms, which are not the ones you're going to be used, we'd often get people saying it's an open access journal, it's a 5-year embargo. You kind of go, that doesn't work. It can be open in 5 years, but it can't be open access now and be 5 years embargo. The new form, I think, makes that easier for the editor to submit and get things the right way round.
Also, I wanted to ask about, I know that your position is somehow independent and you are not suggesting or recommending, but still, when speaking about creation journals usually have their own websites, which are different kind of qualities. Some websites are really maintained regularly. Some websites are somehow old, and they have actually the websites on Hrvatskih. So each journal has a kind of so entering the URL address for the journal. So we know that for directory of open access journals, they are not allowed to enter more than one URL address, and a directory is also suggesting to enter the journal website, not a platform as a Hrvatskih address. So do you have any suggestions related to that?
I'm not sure if we do. Am I right in thinking we still have an additional information section in our form, Melanie?
Yeah, there should be somewhere where you can put free text, yeah.
So so you could put the alternative URL there, and then we will make a judgment of which is the most appropriate. I think we do have entries in Romeo at the moment that have the Sažetak website for the journals.
Yes. Some journals, for some journals, Sažetak is only the website that have, but most of the journals have also own website. So Eva, when you are declaring the website of your journal, you are using your website or Sažetak website?
Yes, we are using our website, but it depends from the journal if they have someone who administrates their website. Some journals have a really good and functional and updated websites, and some of them are struggling with the lack of resources, so they're using mainly Sažetak, and then they have like a backup website of their own, but they're not updating much on it. So it depends, but we are primarily using our web or our own website, and then Sažetak is something which is next, like an alternative URL we are using. So I saw that someone asked whether there are some finance costs or finances needed to be included in Sherpa Romeo, but it's not. So I would like to ask, what are your feelings about JISC? Would it be integrated in some other platforms? Would it be something which would be used for evaluation of journals in future? Could it be? Well, could it be used in that way?
So Yeah, I should add that we have an API as part of Sherpa. So all of our data that's in Sherpa is available through our API. It's open for others to take that API and plug it into their own systems or build systems around it. So yes, Sherpa data does appear in various other systems. You know, I know that there's some of the research information systems that are used in universities have display the Sherpa data directly within that system. A few other platforms do use it as well. So yes, we don't have a definitive list. We don't always necessarily know when people are putting Sherpa data in, to be honest. But it is used widely.
Yeah, because I think it's needed to be emphasized that it's a free service which is available to journals, which they should take the advantage of it and be included. Because how many do you have a total number of journals included so far in Sherpa Romeo? Approximate number, you don't have.
What's our current number? Jane and Melanie probably have a more up-to-date one than I do.
Yeah, total number of journals listed is probably about 27,000.
Yeah, so it's really a nice number, and nice to be around so many journals from. I noticed when I browsed through your website that there are a lot of journals from United States and United Kingdom. So it's really good to be in that neighborhood and to share our policies and how to use our information published in our journals that way. So it's a piece of advice for a new editors or young editors. So do we have any other question? Do you want to share something? Well, I see that Melanie and Jane wrote you, Davor and Maria, that they will get back to you. I actually received several inquiries from Croatian Association for Scholarly Communication members previously, but I've handled them in contact with Jane, and we had some corrections of information and additions. And I think since we collected around 145 journal archiving policies and licensing policies, I see that around 105 is so far in Sherpa Romeo. So can I expect to see the rest of them, these 35 who are still waiting to be included soon, perhaps?
But we are not sure, Eva, that 105 which are included are all present in our spreadsheet.
Yeah, that's true.
140.
Because some of them
we didn't compare this, but certainly about 50, 60 journals is missing from our list. So, and maybe just because we have our editors here and our colleagues from JISC, so yes, there are not recommendations on Sherpa Romeo, so editors can decide about rights and licensing on different versions of the article, but still they need to consider, for example, published version. It's good to allow for published version to be shared on other websites too. But there is no need that it's only on a journal website present. So it's really good to be allowed. And for accepted version is very interesting for authors when they want to publish a kind of final version of article after peer review process. And it's good to allow this to be published on author's homepage, for example, and in institutional repository, of course. And a submitted version, that's what we call preprint. Preprint are more and more popular, so it is really good. And it is shown that articles published as a preprints are more cited, more visible, more influential somehow. So it's good to allow also a submitted version to be published on primarily in institutional repository and on author's homepage. So that's some recommendation from my side to our editors.
Yeah, it's good to have such recommendations, because I know that many of them are actually struggling with the decision how to, perhaps because we inherited some strict licensing policies from before, and before open access movement, and they switched to open access, and actually those policies were not updated at the level we are supposed to do. So
But
perhaps,
yes, Eva, but that
perhaps
because
some information is not up to date.
Yeah. I see the primary reasons for this, what you mentioned, that journal publishing was never in commercial area in Croatia. So it was always somehow very, so what I want to say, that open access was somehow very natural for editors and publishers to accept as a model, but in this transfer to open access, somehow publishers and journals didn't realize how copyright and licensing is important, because it was never part of the commercial models, and yes, and they needed some time to realize that they still need to, even if their business model is not commercial, they still need to declare who is the copyright owner, who is what readers can do later with the published article, in which way they can use the article. So there is still a lot to be learned, and somehow at that time of open access development, yes, Eva, you maybe know the details, the new national copyright law was issued, bringing more, not so much clarification, but maybe even more confusion, yes.
Yeah, I think that's a great topic, and actually we are planning to have a webinar about copyright and licensing policies for CRASC members. I think we can, shed some light into it. So to clarify what is something they should choose as a policy for their journal. So if we don't have,
I have one important, if you allow me.
Yeah, of course.
And sorry for that I interrupted you before. So
we still have some time. So
yes. So what I want to say that Sherpa Romeo is such a valuable resource, and it's really important for every open access journal to be present there. And to declare clearly the policies, not only for the published content, but also for accepted version, submitted version, etc. So it's Sherpa Romeo is used through EPIS by many platforms, different platforms, and the numbers from Croatia are always underestimated. So I think that having in mind that we have 500 open access journals, we should have more journals present in Sherpa Romeo, and I'm sure about that. And I'm really grateful to our colleagues to explain us how this application process works, and yes, probably, yes, I know it's an additional effort on the editor's website, but it's still worth to do it and to ensure presence in Sherpa Romeo. So, and I'm always somehow sad when I see different visualization of open access and different results of monitoring or open access and open access journals, and where the number from Croatia are so much underestimated, because, for example, in directory of open access journals, we also have only 120 or 30 journals present at the moment. So it's somehow these numbers are taken as official, and nobody is looking at Hrvatskih for official numbers. So we really need this treasure, what we have on Hrvatskih, also
to be visible,
present,
yeah,
to be visible, yes.
Because we have those information already in Hrvatskih, and most of them are compliant with directory of open access journals, but they are perhaps not aware or not listed, or not, they have not submitted their application yet. So I'm asking younger and new editors to think about it, and to see how they can apply, and they can always ask us or our colleagues from JISC if they need some help. And we have another webinar on 14th for those journal editors who couldn't come today. But if someone wants to join us, then once again, there are still some spaces for registration, so please feel free to register. And then we can, perhaps you will have some concrete questions when you go through the application form, and then you can ask Jane, Karen, or Melanie then. So if it's all, I want to thank you all for speaking today, Jadranka, Jane, Karen, and Melanie. Karen for your presentation, and Melanie and Jane for your input for our participants. And we will be, of course, in touch. And as I already said, you can ask. I think we wrote in chat. Yes, Melanie wrote in chat. I will copy it once again. You can send your inquiries to help@jisc.ac.uk, and or you can contact me at I will write you here our znak@znak.hr mail address, sorry, and I can then perhaps either give you information or ask the girls to help us with it. So thank you all. Thank you for joining us today. Have a lovely rest of the week, and see you soon.
Thank you very much.
Bye, everyone. Bye-bye.
Thanks. Bye.